Welcome to Creative Current, a podcast for those of us who want to get caught up in our creativity.
We're Jess and Jen, two friends and creatives who met in tech and realized we both spoke the same language of possibility, imagination, and creation.
We believe that creativity is a living force, powerful and magnetic. Like a current, you don't control it. And when you stop fighting it and let it move you, you realize it leads you to where you wanted to be all along.
This podcast is about staying with that current through self-doubt, uncertainty, and loneliness, and trusting that your creativity is worth it.
Over the next 12 weeks, we'll be following the artist's way, and we'll be discussing the chapters and our experiences doing the work. We see it as an opportunity to explore the depths of creativity and its connection to life's biggest questions and possibilities in a collaborative, community-building way.
We're really glad you're here.
And we're on the artist's way, discussing week 1, chapter 1. Jess,
Yes.
tell me how the week went for you.
Oh my gosh. Well, to be totally honest, I was still kind of busy transitioning out and then doing the artist way in the background. But this chapter, I think, is just so important. The title of this chapter is Recovering a Sense of Safety. And I could go back and see when I first read this chapter, I had almost every single line underlined.
But I'll pause there. Like, Jen, how did this week go for you?
Okay, before I answer that, I just think it'd be so good if you could add what you transitioned out of for anybody who might not be caught up to speed.
Great point. So for anyone who's not caught up yet, I left my job on Friday. So Friday was the last day of a full-time job in tech. And it took me a few
Mm.
And now
months.
it's the following Wednesday, so
And now it's
not
the
that
following
many days.
Wednesday. No, we're fresh. We're fresh off the hot off the press in a swirl of change. Yeah.
I can just the theme of safety and like
Safety.
leaving such a probably the most primary source of security and safety in our world is pretty amazing. The timing of that.
Yeah. It definitely is.
And just reading this chapter, I've had some things come up where it's like, oh, I thought I prepped myself so well for this change. And yet it's kind of funny how I'm still getting little fear voices just cropping up. And last night, finally, I had some quiet time and I just really meditated and was like, whoa, okay, I need to drop back in into all of this material and not get so caught up with external events and pressures and voices from other people. So, okay.
So
Well,
should I say my week?
Yeah.
Week?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I thought it was a great week. It was nice for the first time in like years, probably I journaled and did my morning pages over the weekend because I was like, I have to do this, where usually like family life just rolls over any of my own intentions for how I'll spend my time. So that was pretty cool to actually see it happen. They didn't do them in the morning either day, but the fact that they happened felt really good. And I loved the section. I think the part that like resonated with me the most was the part on the core negative beliefs, because that's like always my Achilles heel is these things, and my core negative beliefs are so strong, and my sense and my ability and my like the pull that I have to create is stronger. And so I have created a lot of things, and I have really believed in myself and brought things to life, but then all of my core beliefs tend to be around sharing and what will happen once I release things into the world. And so that's like where all of most of my like self-sabotaging behaviors show up. It's around launching or not launching something or like, not finishing something because then it needs to become realized and put into the world. And that's where I confront those core negative beliefs, which I've been like, working through some of them. But that was just interesting to see is like, oh yeah, I don't really have that many things that keep me from feeling unsafe to create, but it's about putting them out into the world is where my lack of safety shows up.
Which is so reasonable and so relatable.
I mean, even through all the years working in my tech companies, I always remember hitting the publish button, under a brand voice. It's just so anxiety inducing, or could be at many times. And so, Jen, like,
Did anything come up for you in some of these exercises where you were able to examine
what some of those core beliefs were? So it's always like, I think she says
Mm-hmm.
the negative thoughts, they lead us back to core beliefs.
Yeah. Um, yes, I think, well, okay, actually, I think the biggest thing that happened from reading this was being like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone in these feelings. Like, they have always felt so personal to me. And then because they felt so personal, they felt very real, you know?
Yeah.
And then I read them, and literally my first two are the first two that she lists. Number one, number two.
No way.
Everyone will hate me. Yep. I mean, like, feel that so strong. Everyone's going to hate me if I am creative.
Oh my God.
And also, I will hurt my friends and family. I'm like, yep, yep. And and it's so interesting because I have actually had done a lot of work with these ones in the past. And there's just always new levels and new deeper ways to work with them, I think, and like new ways that they emerge. I mean, my earliest, like some of my earliest memories, it was like around friends and being like getting the message very clearly. Well, like if you like try at that, or if you do good at that, or you take that seriously, like you're not gonna fit in anymore, We moved states when I was going into second grade. So I was like in second grade and making all new friends, and friends have always been so important to me. And we were like learning math tables. Do you remember like math little worksheets and like time
Yep.
tests and stuff?
Yep.
And that's one thing I just really liked and enjoyed and got in school. And I remember just the comments of like, you always finish first, Jenny, or like just from like friends at my table that just like obviously hated the fact that I was doing it. And it hurt so bad. I was like, oh, like I'm making this person feel bad. That's my friend. I don't want that to happen. And so I started to just not do that. Or like when I would get all of them right, be like, got 10 out of 10 again, like I just remember that. So I started to purposely get them wrong, to like sit there and not finish my test and not turn it in. I totally changed my behavior to accommodate and try to stay friends with these people. And that is like a story that's easy to share now because it feels so long ago and so little. But I would just say that behavior has pretty much followed me the rest of my life.
Okay.
There it goes. Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah. And then, can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
I'm gonna clash this now to like a way that type of fear, I sort of like was able to work with it in a different way. This is about 2 years ago, and I was wanting to start the newsletter that I now have.
So awesome, by the way.
Thank you. It's a Creative Foresight newsletter. But I was wanting to start it. And at that time, I was like, I had just had my second child. They were still like a newborn baby at the time. And I had gone back and I was working in tech. So I hadn't like been focused on a creative project since becoming a mom, really. Like I had
Mm-hmm.
taken a couple of years where I hadn't like launched anything. And so all of a sudden these like new fears came really strong, and I started to work with a creativity and writing coach to help. And one of the things she had us do at the beginning, it was a cohort, was to do a visualization. So she walked us through this visualization where basically like we visualized like our worst fears coming true and like what that looked like, and writing it down. And it was great. I had that. This was also one of my first like true like guided visualization exercises from a coach like this. So I didn't know what I was getting into. And I saw myself white haired, wrinkled, like an old woman, like drunk and on drugs on a park bench, like homeless. Like I was like, this is what I got. And like, so the
Oh my
visualization, the
God.
way she led it was like basically like, what's the worst that could happen if you choose to follow your creativity? So like deep down, that's what I believed. I was like, if I actually follow my creativity, it's going to like leave me to like abandoning my family. It's going to lead me to like down all these dangerous paths that's not good for me. I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to be totally alone, and like not in a good place. And then so anyways, I just thought that was so crazy, like reading through this list of fears, as I was like, that visualization was like my visualized version of all of these core beliefs that we're told about what creativity will lead to.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, and so then the interesting thing was like, as I worked with that some more, I realized that's not true, but it actually will be a disservice to my family and especially my kids if I don't pursue my creativity, because that is where my like life force energy and my most truest self and like my best gifts come through. And so then it was able to flip to me, and a new story to tell myself is that like pursuing and honoring my creativity is the best gift I can give to my
Mm.
family.
That's so beautiful. So Jen, that is so visualizations are so powerful. Um, so you had this image of yourself with gray hair, wrinkly, strung out, on drugs and drinking, which is just hilarious knowing you. This is like the funniest thing I've ever heard. And and then but somewhere like walk me through what was the leap of seeing that fear to, oh my gosh, if I don't do this, it's actually a disservice to myself and then a disservice to everyone else around me.
I guess I think that's been a lot of unwinding.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that once I had that picture of myself and I realized like, oh, this is what I'm actually afraid of, like, or this is some representation, or like, and then so it gave me something to like challenge my thoughts and what I was actually experiencing day to day against that. And I was like, oh, no, these aren't the same things. I like doing something creative is not me abandoning my kid. But like that's sort of how it felt until I had something to like challenge it, I guess, against, sorry.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it was a lot of that. And then realizing like, oh, my like looking at my history too is like my creative like promptings have never led me to a worse
Mm.
situation in my life. They have always
Mm-hmm.
created more life, more opportunity, more truth, more honesty. And so it was really like just something that like gave my mind something to chew on, and it made me realize that like the thoughts that I was thinking weren't going to lead they weren't dangerous, and they weren't going to lead my creativity wasn't going to lead me in a bad direction.
Mm. It's so Gosh, everything you're saying resonates so much. And especially, it's so interesting. I feel like I heard just a glimmer of this where it's like the fears evolve with your life. I mean, she calls them, maybe she used the word monster in the book to reference some of this. And
They're just imaginary, right? They're just thoughts. It's not reality, but then it can add up to these blockers, these big blockers. And I know I'm very much still working through some blockers. Um, but wow, Jen, yeah.
Do you have anything you'd like to share about like any of the core beliefs that came up or the negative thoughts and how they surface for you?
yeah. I mean, the first thought as I was going through this chapter, I realized, gosh, I was so blocked. And similarly to you, I had been working with a coach. I have been working with a coach for the last 3 years, and we all had to do a project as part of this coaching cohort. And I wanted to just go back to interviewing people. And thus, I started my Substack. But what people might not know is it actually took me 3 months from the idea and like knowing exactly what I was going to do, actually probably longer, probably 7 months, to then sending that first email to my um, interview subject, Teddy. And it's just, I was just terrified to send the email. And I realized like, wow, what is all the what is all the blockages around this? Why is it taking me 7 months? It's just an email. Um, and we did some exercises where we reviewed, basically I was able to start naming what those negative thoughts were, writing them down, because it's, I don't know, the only way I try to describe this to some friends, it feels like this cloudy blocker that's just like on autopilot, coming up before every time I sit in front of my computer to email Teddy. And once I actually wrote down what the negative beliefs or thoughts were, which is what Julia recommends, I could see that it traveled back to middle school where I was getting over edited a lot in my writing. And like, this belief just kind of, oh my gosh, it was so deep in my subconscious. I really hadn't thought about it in years. And then with so much investment in changing the way that I'm looking at myself and looking at the world, and forgiveness for some of those people who I love who edited my work heavily, it's like I could dismantle that and then clear an opening for a new reality, like a different version, and basically dismantle those stories and not see them as truths. Yeah, and I also realized there was another, in high school I was really exploring my creativity. Man, like my senior and junior year, I was just doing so many creative projects, and I was probably the happiest, like it was one of the happiest periods of my life. I was so excited. And it was just something as simple as like not getting a dance scholarship, that then I thought like, oh gosh, I must not be a dancer, and like attributing so much meaning to like an award that it's like that didn't mean anything about me. And like I'm very happy for the person who got it anyway. And um just unearthing like so many labels that I had assigned to myself without more question or more exploration. And like what's so interesting is I kind of assign myself these labels and realize like these were things that gave me a lot of joy. Writing gave me a lot of joy, dancing gave me a lot of joy. And then collecting evidence that like, oh man, well, because I'm not getting externally recognized for these things, that just means I shouldn't pursue it, which is really sad, since they gave me a lot of happiness and internal peace. And I don't think it never really got so dramatic, but it's just kind of interesting that was like, I think that was uh
like a motor humming in the background for a lot of years. And now finally just having new tools, new exercises to help me break through, yeah, those old patterns.
Wow. Um, there's two things I would love to respond to in that, and one to ask you a question about. Um, I love I love that like younger Jess knew who she was and just like expressed herself and felt the joy of that. And I resonate so much with that like such limited thinking at that time in life. Like I did that to myself too, where I like art was like my primary joy and writing. I wrote all the time, but I was like, well, writing is just that's just journaling. It's just private anyways. So like I can keep doing that one, but the art, I remember my art was good, but I was not like the known artist in school. And so I was like, well, it's not for me. And so I didn't even like submit my I did AP art, but I didn't even submit my portfolio because I was like, well, what's the point? I'm not going to go to art school. Do you know? So like, why do it? And then it's crazy because as soon as I moved out of my parents' house and I didn't have like access to the space and all my tools, I couldn't bring them to every place I lived. It totally changed how much I even practiced art, you know? Like, I'm always so impressed now as an adult by other adults who I meet and they just have these like hobbies that they do or even like sports where they're like, "Oh yeah, I just play basketball or I just play tennis for
Yeah.
fun." And I'm like, wow, like there's definitely the part of my brain that got conditioned to be like, if you are not going to excel at this and make money from it, then it's not for you. I mean, that's not true. I had a lot of hobbies younger, but I always felt like it was an identity thing rather than just like for the fun of it. And I think that's something that like generationally we're getting a lot better at, just realizing that like a full life consists of a lot of things and you can be a
Mm.
lot of things. Um, okay, Jess. So I'm not sure if this is in week 1 of the book or in the introduction, but I am so compelled to ask you about this editing thing because it's fascinating to me that this like core wound that you had to your creative self was around editing and that is what your profession is. And
Yep.
And I am like, tell me more about this relationship.
Oh my gosh. Oh man. There's so much here. Okay. But I think okay, here's how I can synthesize it.
I have been doing content in tech for a long time and for startups and editorial work. So I've just always done writing. And I still got edited in my first job. And, actually a few things. Now that I say this, I'm like, gosh, the editing was such a beautiful thing to happen to me in my first job. Like I'm very grateful for that editor. And actually in every job I've had, I mean, essentially the co-founders end up being the editors of a lot of my work. And like it's so interesting because I've absorbed so many different parts of their style, things that I like, things that I bring into my own writing, things that I don't like. And then even in middle school, I think I made so much peace with this because I could see what the desired vision was supposed to be. Um, maybe it ultimately gave me a framework. And I think then it was my job later and part of my journey as a soul on this earth to like, instead of, instead of continuing with this, like, oh man, I'm not the greatest writer, or like, I'm an okay writer, or, I have this job, I know how to do it, but like, I'm still uncomfortable with the word writer. And actually she talks about the word artist, which I want to ask you about too. Like I've never identified myself as an artist or a writer. Um, but I think it's so interesting because in this chapter she talks about, well, before I get to that, it's like, can you just call yourself a writer if you enjoy writing? Why does the writing have to be a Pulitzer Prize winning level? there's so many conditions that I put around it. Like, oh, if I'm a writer, I'm acknowledged and recognized um and it's like, ooh, can we just deconstruct that? And I really love how she talks about, I know I'm kind of winding this around in a different way, but like, oh man, there's one quote that I really loved. It's impossible to get better and look good at the same time. So anyway, why can't we call ourselves writers and dancers and artists or creatives if we're just finding joy from it? Like, why do we have to, yeah, I don't know, be, be recognized or get to some level where we feel like we're excelling, which I think that's the greatest trick of all, is that we never really feel like we're there. But I don't know, Jen, like, I'm curious what you think about this.
Oh, yes. Okay. Can I ask you like a really pointed question real quick?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So you were talking about how you still feel uncomfortable, like kind of calling yourself a writer, maybe. And I'm like, and you are a writer, first of all. But also, do you feel like I'm looking at it's on page 27 where she's kind of talking about the shadow artists and how
Mhm.
people who are artists like kind of gravitate into jobs and roles where they're like supporting other people. And I'm like, is that editing for you? Is that your shadow job?
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely
Like,
Oh,
I'm very
see,
close to it. I'm
yeah,
very close to it. I'm like responsible for these words, but it's not you and your voice.
that's right.
It's like
That's
one
right.
step removed.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I'm uncomfortable.
It's
Which
okay.
is funny and good.
And no, but that writing, starting my Substack, another whole piece of that was sharing my thoughts with no brand logo, shadow, covering me, protecting me. All these years I've written for so many brands and ghostwritten, and yes, I have my name on pieces too that I've done, but it's always like there's always positioning I'm aligning to. There's always there's goals, and I've never um I've never felt so exposed. And so yeah, I think the shadow artist work, that's like, it's very safe. I don't have to reconcile with, anyone's thoughts about my personal beliefs out in the world um when I'm writing for a brand. And yeah, it certainly is fulfilling in certain ways, but I mean, here I am knowing that I needed to quit my job. Apparently it wasn't fulfilling in all the ways that I needed it to be, at least not at this time of my life right now. So, yeah.
Thank you
Shadow
for sharing.
artists
Thank
community,
you.
shout out. I'm here. I'm with you. I'm still probably there recovering.
I love it. I love it. Um, I know right before I asked that you directed a question back at me, but I can't recall it.
I also can't recall it. Oh, well, actually I do have a question that I wanted to make sure we got to, and this
Right.
it's still in the same umbrella. Jen, do you feel like you've deconstructed perfectionism? That's another thing she talks about in this chapter. And I think so many people can relate to this. At least I could name 3 people who expressed this to me in some way in San Francisco in the last 3 years, which is like, why do something if I'm not good at it or if I'm not going to make money from it? And I'm curious, like, is there an intersection of perfectionism there? And yeah, yeah. Where are you at with
Okay.
perfectionism?
Great question. Okay, maybe I feel like maybe this is a good one because this is one where I feel like I actually do have a very good relationship with this one. So I yeah, I know that I have some perfectionist tendencies, of course, but also I feel like this is something that I have like been working with so much. And it's like, okay, either I honor and I am true to what needs to be done and what I feel like I need to do, or I just sit and don't do it, you know? And like to me, as soon as that like trade-off comes into focus, I'm like, no, I just gotta go. I just gotta publish it. You know, I think that like to me, perfectionism is like one of the saddest things to see keeping people back because it's like, so there. Yeah, I was really inspired early on. So I ended up somehow by after trying like 10 different majors and like 4 different colleges. I was had a crazy college time, but I ended up graduating with a creative writing degree. And with very much the attitude of like, I just got the degree. Now I can just go do whatever. Okay, you know what I mean? Now I can figure it out. I don't know. It's not the most planned, but I did. By that time, I had already started a blog and I was writing, and I had never really seen myself as an author. Like I didn't go and get the writing degree because I like wanted to write books necessarily, but I I love reading nonfiction, and that they just got to think long enough about different things to like put it into a book and incorporate all of their life into it. Like I was like kind of fascinated by that lifestyle. And so eventually, as I kept writing my blog, I ended up with an idea for a book. And it became very clear that like this was a book that I could write, should write, was going to write. And I was 23 or 24, you know, and like had nobody in my life that had done something like that. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't know if I'll ever get a publishing deal. Like, I hear those don't happen. I don't have all these things. But there was this one author who I was reading probably her like 5th book at that time. And I had liked all of her books before. I liked her as a person, liked what she wrote about. And I was reading one of her books, and she talked about how the first thing she wrote, she was a mom with like little kids, and she was like, I just felt so compelled to write this thing. So I wrote it, and she's like, and I didn't even know what to call it at the end. So she's like, so I called it a pamphlet. And I like started handing it out anyways, and then it ended up getting published.
Yeah.
Okay. And that led to more and more things. And she is talking about it, and she talks in the book about how she's kind of embarrassed by that early thing, but it was like so earnest when she did it. Anyways, and I remember being like, okay, so if I want to get to like 40 years old, like I think that's around how old she was when she was writing this current book. If I want to get to that age and have books that I'm proud of and that are good, like I need to practice now. And so I was like, let me just write my first book. And I did it. And I did it really scrappily, but I also did it really a lot of like really cool things happened too. I self-published it, and I did a Kickstarter with like for $14,000 and was able to like fund all of that. People responded, you know, to the vision and to the book. I know, it was like, what on earth? This is amazing. And then I submitted it, and I used that as my book launch. So my Kickstarter funded, and then I basically used that money to like pay myself back for like how much money I put into it. Because at this time in my life, I did not have much money. I published the book right before I turned 25. So, yeah, I had worked it out that way, but that was like my energy going into the book launch. I gave everybody like special edition hardcover books. It was really fun and cool. And then I submitted my book to Publishers Weekly, which is like one of the top like book reviewing things, and they have self-publishing, like they had, at least they had back then, and it was like out of 10,000 books, like, you know, being reviewed, they chose my book and gave me a review and published it in their magazine.
Oh my
And
God.
I was
what?
like, what? Oh my God. Like, and it
I
was
had
totally,
no idea.
yeah, it
Whoa.
was just so cool. And it was a review of my book. And I would call it a positive review. It was not a glowing. I mean, it was like, I mean, at the time I was like, okay, yeah, this describes my book. Like what? I don't know. But the fact of the matter is I was like, something was compelling about this book that they chose. And then, anyways, and so I think like that's a story just like of, I think like very early on, I was training myself of like the long view of my creative career and really embodied, I think, what she's kind of talking about in this is like you need to just go and release and like not hold everything. So, like, not everything that I create and make is going to fully capture who I am. But then again, I would say that's
Mm.
also something I've like learned over and over again. So, but it's pieces of me. And yeah, it was
I need that it's cut out on my refrigerator. Jen, that's so powerful.
That's so freeing. That's so permission giving. Not everything you create is going to reflect all of who you are. Wow.
but if
I
you
mean,
create one thing, if you only create one thing, then it has a lot more weight to who you
Wow.
are, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, it's actually a
Yeah.
motivation to create more and like round out your body of work to show
Mm.
a fuller picture of who you are.
Wow. Yeah. I needed to hear that one today. I've never thought about that. Not even a singular time.
and I've just been putting so much pressure on myself again. Hello, hi, Artist Way, and all these conversations with my Substack of, oh my gosh, just needing every single piece to be the epitome of excellence and so much. Anyway, wait on that. And um, gosh, that is such,
That is such a freeing way to look at it. And I think, wow. Mm. And it's crazy because I feel like a lot of where this is coming from for me is
this polish that is just hammered into us working in brands and working at companies that are, taking off. And I think there's beautiful elements in that. But then what I'm hearing, it's like what you said is just loosening the reins. And it's like it's okay. It's okay to play, it's okay to be fluid, it's okay to be authentic. And uh yeah, I think that's something I'm still actively working through. But everything you're saying is such a beautiful example, expanding what that could look like and what that could feel like. Hmm.
Yeah. I'm so glad it resonated. I am curious what you did on your, if you were able to like complete the morning pages every day and if you were able to do an artist date this week.
So I completed the morning pages most days. I am having a tough time with the morning pages, which is funny. Some things have come from the morning pages, though, for me. So I do think they are sacred and I'm going to keep going. And I think the resistance is just exactly what she's talking about in the book. Um, I think this week in the morning pages, the message that stood out to me the most was noticing that I was in a lot of frenzy, frantic energy, which is not normal for me. Um and noticing that there was a larger part that is it's like my creative part that was like, Jess, we need to slow down a little bit. We need to drop in. We've got that frenzied logistic stuff all out of the way, and some of it might still come up in little waves. But how do we come back and drop in? And also, like, where's the frenzied energy coming? Like, I could do all these logistics without that energy. I can sit and trust and know that everything is playing out just fine. So I think it was just a good reminder for that. And then I also noticed, I did one of the exercises. So instead of the artist date, what I did do was write down, I, Jessica, am a brilliant and prolific writer 10 times. And she says, like, what comes up for you? I did have some devils on my shoulder just saying, like, wow, Jess, you still didn't interview this person, or you still didn't email this person you wanted to reach out to. And how are you a brilliant and prolific writer if you've only written two Substacks? And just, just there's a lot that came up. And so I clearly have some more work to do.
Thank you so much for sharing that, though. I mean, it's so relatable and vulnerable to share that. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, so Jen, what came up for you with did you do any of that? Morning pages, you did.
Yes, I did the morning pages. I did them every day, which was great. It's so weird to me how like I am somehow just able to like like it's like they just kind of always complete right at the bottom of the third page. And I'm like, that is so weird. I guess I'm probably just like internally, some subconsciously tracking like where to finish my thoughts, but it's just so weird to me. Interestingly, though, look at this is my journal that I'm about to finish. So I was like, oh, I got to be ready for the next one.
Oh my God, I love it.
But then I bought this one and I'm like, it's so tiny. So it's like half the size. So I'm like, what will I do? Well, I need to write 6 pages. She never clarifies how big of a page
This
to
is true.
write. And
I was
I'm
thinking about
like,
this.
there is such a broad difference. So, but yeah, that was good. I definitely notice myself trying to like double up on work in my morning pages, which I feel like she kind of writes about the best way to do morning pages is just to do your like mental clutter and not try to make it into anything. And that is so hard for me because time scarcity is one of my biggest issues, things that like distracts me. So I do notice that I'm trying to like write my website copy kind of while I do it, or like I'm trying to use it to like write out my intentions or my affirmation, like rather than just clutter. But then
Mm.
also I'm like, I don't know. Maybe that is also what's like flowing because it still flows. And then I did not do an artist date. I had planned to go ice skating because I was like, that sounds fun and different. I used to like ice skating a lot, so I thought I would try that, but then just logistically was really hard yesterday. I just like made the call not to do it. Felt kind of bad, but and then I did the exercises, some of them in here. And I don't think I think I realized, oh, there's a deer out my window. Sorry. I
Oh,
realized that
we love tears.
it's
Oh.
it's very it's very sweet. I yeah, I think I just realized how much all of my beliefs and stuff because in chapter 1 she talks a lot about kind of identifying where these narratives have come from. And I realized that I have kind of like I don't have that many narratives that were given to me from other people specifically that are holding me back. They're like narratives that like I have interpreted or made up myself to explain situations. And so that in and of itself was valuable to recognize, to be like, okay, if this is about my perception of the situation, like it's more in my control. And potentially if I just let myself do all these things, what I would receive is encouragement and good things because I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? I like just assume that it's going to be bad. So I think that was good to realize that I don't really have excuses. I mean, I have my baggage for reasons I have baggage, but also I was like most of it is things that I have just kind of made up in my head rather than actual forces
Mm.
blocking me or
Mm-hmm.
limiting me.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Those fears, the fear brain, trying to
mhm.
like keep you protected.
Mhm.
Mm. Jen, in terms of just like the overall chapter and the theme of safety, creative safety, like, is there anything you want to embrace from this week moving into next week? Like for
Mm.
you?
What is next week's topic? That might actually
Good question.
okay. Oh, sense of identity. Um, that's a great question. Jess, I feel like in the broad strokes, I would be like just like grounding in that safety. Maybe before I do any creative work this week? Like maybe actually taking the moment. I've been hearing a lot of people talk about like ritualizing things lately and kind of like the value of making things a ritual. So I'm like, maybe I'll play with that and see like, is there a ritual that I can create to like tell myself, remind myself that I'm safe before I do something to like put myself out there. So I'll have to think about more about that. That just came to my mind when you asked the question. But um, yeah, how about you?
I love that. Oh gosh, I'm also going to adopt that. Um yeah, I think for me, along with the negative beliefs are the affirmations and the importance of those that she talked about. And I do have something that I've been putting off, which is kind of like a visionary scene for when I go to New York in a week or two. And so I think just spending some time today and tomorrow revisiting those affirmations for New York and for our podcast. Um yeah.
Amazing. Well, I feel like this seems like a good place to wrap it up until next week when we'll be talking about The Artist Way Week 2, recovering a sense of identity.
Yay.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks, Jess.
Jen.